I'll also mention the time, although I think it's because there are age groups that are finally getting on the cover. Okay, we're ready to go. The two candidates today have a lot of rules to follow. Trish DeBerry, the Republican in the race, and Peter Sakai, the Democrat. And I'll tell you first of all that you get not to address each other, but answer the questions that I provide. I like to repeat the slogan of my favorite ice house in San Antonio. Its slogan is, "Be nice." So I'm sure we'll follow that here. We'll also give you 3 minutes to open and 3 minutes to close. And there's a timekeeper here somewhere. That's the timekeeper. Pay attention to the timekeeper. You will get 2 minutes for each question. And I guess we did not toss a coin on who goes first.
It matters whoever opens, then closes.
Okay, all right.
Whatever.
So whoever opens, Trish DeBerry,
so I'm happy to get it
will get to close at the end.
Okay.
So here we go.
Thank you. Thank you very much to AARP. Thank you very much to NOWCast, Charlotte, and Lucas. I knew from my journalism years working in television news. Elaine and I obviously have known each other for a long time as well. So I am anxious to get started to be able to talk about the issues that are important to the senior community. As a lifelong San Antonian, born and raised here in San Antonio, the daughter of a career Air Force veteran, my mother worked in civil service at Fort Sam Houston, which is now Joint Base San Antonio, for probably 25 or 30 years. So as I left my dad's house tonight, because he's 96 years old, he actually was in the emergency room last night. So he had a problem with a vein, and it was bleeding, and so he had to go. And so look, I mean, I say that to say all of these things. It is terrible and tragic to be able to take care, but also humbling, to take care of aging parents. Because certainly they have their issues and you have to be there for them. And you are there for them. As the youngest of 6 children, I mean, I was there for my mother when she passed at the age of 90 a year ago. But she lived in assisted living. And all of these things that we talk about, I mean, why I'm so proud to be here today. Because I feel like I have lived and breathed senior issues for the better part of probably 15 years. As we look at access and affordability to health care, as we look at the opportunity for telehealth, for a university health system to come into the homes of people to be able to treat people in their homes with a mobile unit. I think as a county judge, you have to be able to fund and innovate and look at that kind of technology to be able to keep people in their homes. Probably the saddest day was my mother had to go from assisted living or independent living into assisted living. I think the longer we can keep people in their homes, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this when we talk about property taxes and keeping people and not in their homes and not taxing people out of their homes. We should have a conversation about that because folks that have lived in their homes generationally need to be there. And so as somebody, as we move along in this conversation, there are stark differences between the two candidates. I'm a small business owner. I have been for 25 years. Had as many as 100 employees. Signed the front of a paycheck and the back of a paycheck. Made sure that we had health care insurance for all employees. Innovated and had on-site daycare at the office that I managed. That's the kind of innovation that I want to bring to the courthouse, which, by the way, my hope is we get to talk more about the elder fraud unit that I restored to the DA's office because it had been vacant for 5 years. I'm a problem solver. I'm not a professional politician. And I dig in, and your issues are important issues, And as you are next Bexar County judge, there's going to be a laser focus on that. Thank you.
Well, let me thank everybody here, and I want to thank NOWCastSA, Charlotte Lucas, and Lisa Rodriguez with the AARP. Thank you for putting this forum. Thank you for all the members of AARP for being here, taking the time, and thank everybody who's on the live cast or wherever you're at, on Facebook Live, who knows where you are, but thank you for participating in this forum. It's an important election. My name is Judge Peter Sakai, and I'm running for county judge, and I'm here to ask for your support and your vote. I want to recognize Dr. Robert Garza. I know he had to go, but he's president here at Palo Alto, and got to put a shout out for Rachel, who was an instructor here with the Gates Foundation, the Gates program, running a dropout program. So thank you, Rachel, for the wonderful program you ran here at Palo Alto. You know, the issues with seniors is very near and dear to me. Obviously, one of the life experiences was taking care of both of my mother-in-law, mi suegra, Margarita Diaz, and my mother, Rosemary Sakai, who lived with my sister here in San Antonio, Kathy Sakai, who I think is here too. And so I want to put a shout out for her commitment to helping take care of my mom. And so we took care of both my mother-in-law and my mother in those years of where we had to go to hospice and then palliative care. So I am very, very familiar with end of life. And I'm really proud of my children, George and Elizabeth, who helped raise their grandmas and take care of their grandmas during this period of time, because as Rachel and I come to that period of life, I'm hoping that my children will learn to take care of us too. And I think that's the important lesson for all of us, that we take care of each other, that we're connected, and we have to work hard sometimes to do that. You know, I am running for county judge, and I can let you know that I've been a public servant for nearly 40 years. Started in the district attorney's office, was section chief of the juvenile child abuse section. That's where my connection with children and families started. Parents, represented people who are accused of crime, represented the children in the abuse and neglect docket. I was given an opportunity to be appointed to be the Children's Court, the nationally renowned Children's Court here in Bexar County. And from there, I was able to succeed my friend and mentor, Judge John Spishop, to the 25th District Court, where I served for 4 terms, the last 3 unopposed. So I want to say thank you to this community who has expressed their faith and trust into me as your public servant, a servant leader who truly cares for his community. So who am I? I'm a person who believes in the rule of law. I will have to take an oath to uphold the constitutional laws of this state of the United States, and I am committed to the rule of law. I'm committed to be open and transparent and to make sure that county government is open and transparent so that y'all understand all the issues that come before county. And finally, I'm a unifier, not a divider. I'm somebody who brings people together, and I have helped families and children with innovative and cutting-edge programs. Thank you for the opportunity to come speak tonight and have a conversation.
Thank you, Judge. I'll remind both of our candidates to, when you hear that bell ring, that's your time is up. I am going to ask the one question to each of the candidates, and they will take turns going first. So Judge Sakai will go first in the first question, and it is this. What are 3 major issues for Bexar County seniors as you would identify them?
The 3 big issues, in my opinion, first of all, in my platform, is affordable housing, and to make sure that we have capacity for affordable housing, make sure that we are focused in on the seniors, and to make sure we protect them. And we do that with equity strategies, to make sure that we keep the property tax and try to control it and lower those property taxes if all possible. Let's make sure that we can increase those exemptions and make sure that we give you every tax benefit, tax abatement, tax exemptions, whatever we can in order for the seniors to age in place. The other issue, in my opinion, is the food insecurity and making sure that all parts of our community are taken care of so that we have no food deserts. We have basically an opportunity to work with the seniors that are most in need. And what we're gonna have to do is we're gonna have to create public and private partnerships. I wanna work with Eric Cooper with the food bank. We know that in this COVID world and now in the post-COVID world, that food insecurity is a major issue, especially for seniors. And I really do want to focus in on the digital divide. You know, that was an issue for the students and children, but I think it's more important for the seniors. And the reason being is because of telemedicine and the connectivity that seniors are going to have. So we must have high-speed internet in all parts of the county. We may have to treat high-speed internet like we treat electricity and water. It is a basic infrastructure, it's a basic necessity, and we got to make sure that everybody has that connectivity, because in the post-COVID world and the world we're going to go into, we need to be connected. That freeze that happened last year taught us that seniors who were disconnected and didn't get the warnings who died unnecessarily. And that, I believe, was partly because of the digital divide. We've got a lot of work to do, and that's my focus in as your next county judge, is to work on the children, the families, the seniors that are most important to our community. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, I'll repeat the question.
Sure.
What are the three major issues for Bexar County seniors as you would identify them?
So it's a little bit difficult to hone in on the top three because I think there are so many issues. But number one is when I talked about the fact as a county commissioner, when I went to a meeting, a senior citizens committee on elder fraud and abuse, what I was told is the police are arresting people, but the DA's office is not prosecuting people for those crimes. So what happened? As the problem solver that I am, I dug in. I asked Joe Gonzalez to come down to my office at Commissioner's Court office, and I said, Joe, what are we doing? I pulled in the police department. They're making arrests, but they said, you're not prosecuting the cases. And he said, well, quite honestly, Commissioner, that's been vacant for 5 years. And I said, well, what do you mean it's been vacant for 5 years? You have a backlog of 1,200 cases, which is not right, because you and I all both know, with the aging parents and the father that I have who's 96, the elderly do not have time to wait on restitution nor prosecution. So we needed to move that backlog. And Joe said, well, if you're going to advocate for it and you're going to fund it, then by the way, I don't just need a prosecutor, I need an investigator to come into this office too, because there's a large paper trail. So a lot of this is clearing that backlog, making sure that we are prosecuting those elder fraud scam cases, because it happens every single day to seniors. Number two, we talk about the big freeze and snowmageddon. My mother was one of those who was 90 when she was in assisted living and the power went off. She got up to go to the bathroom, tripped, and broke her shoulder. Had to crawl her way out into the hallway to be found. We need assisted living and independent living centers connected to the same grid as the hospital system so that they don't lose power during times of severe cold or severe heat. It's an easy way for us to be able to make sure what happened to my mother does not happen to other seniors. And then number three, quickly, we need a senior citizen one-stop center at the county. That you can walk in, you can cut through the bureaucracy, and you can get done what you need to get done. Thank you.
For the next question, I'll go to Trish DeBerry first. Given that question, what would you do differently that's being done now to address one of those issues?
So we talked a lot, obviously, about elder fraud and elder abuse. When I talk about my 96-year-old father who's scammed either on the phone or on the internet on a regular basis, we've got to make sure we continue to beef up that department. Like I said, there was no excuse that that department remained vacant for 5 years. There was no excuse that there was a 1,200 case backlog. Government is supposed to work for you. Government is supposed to work on behalf of the impoverished and the elderly and those that can't help themselves. So I do think the county can do a better job in focusing in on the senior issues. We'll talk a little bit more about this one-stop center. We've got to cut through the red tape and the bureaucracy associated with how people file for either Social Security, benefits, healthcare insurance, Medicare, Medicaid. What does that look like? We don't have enough advocates. And so I did have a conversation at one time in my county commissioner's office because they knew that I'd restored the elder fraud unit to the DA's office. And they said, hey, WellMed's got a great idea. They might want to fund a senior one-stop center to come into Bexar County. They've got a building picked out so that you're not having seniors, much like what's happening at Gordon Hartman's center, which is a one-stop for the disabled. We need a one-stop, obviously, for not just seniors, but aging veterans too. Because you having to drive or get transportation to go here, there, and yonder to be able to get done what you need to get done is unacceptable. Again, it's a convenience factor. And it's the least that we can do in county government to make sure that you all are being taken care of. And that we have experts that are in that center. So that no matter what the need is, you're able to go in there and you're able to get it taken care of. Joy, who's on my staff, is here today, has a special needs mother. She says the same thing. It's terrible to try to cut through the red tape. We've got to do a better job to be able to take care of our seniors who are aging in place or even finding homes for those that have mental health issues. That's what government in Bexar County needs to do for you.
Judge, given your answers to the first question, what would you do differently than it's already being done to address one of those issues?
One of the issues I believe as day one when I come in as county judge on January 1st is dealing with county government. Sometimes people don't have a hard time understanding what's the county. The county really, the big budget items are the jail, the court system, and the university hospital system. So basically the courts, the jail law enforcement, and providing health care. I truly believe what is different with current status quo is the fact that we need to have more input from the community. I need to hear your voice, especially AARP and the NOWCastSA, and you need to be at the table. And we need to have a discussion of what those problems are and what those issues are and how we can come together. Government has to be big enough to protect its citizens, but it has to be also small enough to live within its budget. So there are going to be some really tough issues that are going to have to be done, but what we need to do is we need to measure the county departments that provide the direct services. I've already signaled to the county staff, we're going to meet with the department heads, we're going to meet with the elected officials, we're going to provide performance reviews, metrics, analytics of how we deliver services. I am looking for Bexar County to provide better customer service at whatever it may be. And I believe that's a fundamental difference, is to improve that, and it's going to be with us having a conversation and figuring out what those problems are and then coming up with the solutions. I truly believe that's what people want in good government. No more political debates, no more political arguments over who's right and who's wrong. Fix the problems that we have. And what we need to do is be able to listen to you and find out what those solutions are. Thank you.
Okay, Judge, you'll be the first one to tackle this question. It's a transportation question. How will you make Bexar County a safer place for pedestrians, which include seniors, cyclists, which include seniors, and maybe motorcycles too, because they include seniors? So how would you make Bexar County safer for all of those groups?
Great question. One of the issues on transportation is I believe the county has a direct interest with VIA, and I want better service, customer service for VIA. I saw that with my mom and my mother-in-law. VIA has that VIA Trans and was able to really help move the elderly and the people who are disabled. But I think there's an opportunity to increase those services. We also have to ask VIA to provide services to those disconnected areas that they don't provide. And so it's going to be up to me as your county judge to go to those areas, the unincorporated areas or the suburban cities, and connect VIA so that we can provide transportation. What we also have to do is connect transportation in what I call equity strategy to the medical services. We also have to use multimodal transportation in how we move people across, east, west, north, south. And what we're going to have to do is the VIA's got that sales, that we recently voted to move that sales tax over to VIA. So we now have a wonderful opportunity, and it's going to take communication, collaboration, and coordination to bring all those stakeholders together in order to provide those transportation issues and to provide a safer place. Obviously, we need to work with the city to make sure that we have the bike lanes and we have sidewalks. Those are all things that the county's going to have to work with as we move into the post-COVID world. Thank y'all very much.
Commissioner, how would you make Bexar County a safer place for pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists?
Yeah, well, I think it's a great question for the seniors that are here today. I was very lucky, obviously, to have a mother and a father and a stepfather who were super active people. I mean, whether they were playing ping pong or whether they were swimming or, you know, whether they were walking on trails, they wanted to remain active. You know, what doesn't help seniors is being sedentary. I mean, I know that for a fact regarding circulatory processes within the elderly, et cetera, especially now with my dad, who, by the way, has purpose in his life as a career Air Force veteran, because at 96, and despite some of his health issues, he still mows his lawn every week because he doesn't trust someone else to mow it for him. And he only drives during the day. He goes to the grocery store, H-E-B, which is right around the corner. But mobility for seniors is about purpose. And where do you find that purpose? You might find that purpose, Elaine, like you just talked about. You might find that purpose walking. You might find that purpose jogging a little bit. You might find that purpose walking on, by the way, the trail system that the city, because of the sales tax going over to VIA, the county took it on. When I was a commissioner, I sat on that court and we appropriated funding, not just at the county level, but we lobbied at the federal government to make sure that we have hiking trails and green line trails all the way around the county. So like I said, it's a circle. It's a big circle, and this is a big county. But we have to make sure that we're appropriating money and we're appropriating it safely. One of the big problems that we have here, and I was privileged to be able to work on that, were really bike lanes and protected bike lanes. With not just protected bike lanes, either whether it's along Broadway or where seniors live, but we have got to have more protected bike lanes all across this county. Because as we talk about transportation and we talk about safe transportation, to Elaine's point, it's got to be protected. Because what we don't have here are enough protected lanes so that you can get on your motorcycle, you can hop on your moped, you can hop on your three-wheeler or whatever you choose to be able to get around town. It's important that it's safe, but it's also important that it's multimodal.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner, you get this next question first.
Okay.
And it's about incorporated areas of the county, unincorporated areas of the county. And there's two questions that are somewhat related, so I'll read both. One is, why is there no bus service in unincorporated areas of the county? And then this one, which I find very intriguing. Commissioner's Court has spent hundreds of millions beautifying downtown San Antonio, which is gorgeous, by the way. What plans do you have for unincorporated areas of the county?
Let's see if we can unpack that a couple of different ways, because, I mean, we are a growing county. We're going to have 6 million people here in Bexar County in 2050, and pretty soon, all of the county lines and the suburban city lines are going to start to merge together. But one of the things I did as a county commissioner was really forge relationships with those suburban cities and those mayors. Whether it was in Castle Hills, whether it was in Fair Oaks, whether it was Elmas Park, whether it was Alamo Heights, what have you, I formed relationships with all the mayors because they all have individual projects. And I tell you what, we came together like nobody's business during Snowmageddon to make sure that people had water, and to make sure that we were getting out and we were advocating really, because by the way, we didn't have water stations, the county did not, or the city did not appropriate monies for water stations that were beyond the unincorporated areas. And so the county stepped in and said, no, no, no. There are a lot of people that live outside the city limits. We've got to have water stations out there. And so that's when that community and I really came together to be able to work together. And so we're absolutely right. Those relationships with the suburban cities are critical, and we have to be meeting with them every month. 26 suburban cities, so that we can make sure that we're addressing healthcare needs. And to your point quickly too, Elaine, about, why not bus service in the unincorporated areas? It's unacceptable that we don't have bus service in the unincorporated areas. But a lot of it is because VIA is a metropolitan San Antonio-owned entity, for the most part, much like CPS Energy. But the county's got to play a role in that. And we got to be able to appropriate money in the right veins to make sure that not just this community, but seniors in particular, have the ability, whether you live inside the city limits of San Antonio or whether you live in Somerset or Von Ormy, that you have access to a bus and you have access to transportation. So it's got to be a focus and it's got to be a priority. You will get that with me as your next Bexar County judge. Thank you.
Could you repeat the question?
Oh, yes, let me look for it. Hold on. What was my question now? I don't remember.
Unincorporated areas.
Oh, yes,
Yeah.
yes. Oh, here
Yeah.
we go. All right. Where did I think I put it over here? I'm so sorry. This is a two-parter, and I'm not sure it came from the same person. Why is there no bus service in unincorporated areas of the county? And Commissioner's Court has spent hundreds of millions beautifying downtown San Antonio. What plans do you have for unincorporated areas of the county?
To answer the first question, it's leadership at VIA. And so what we need to do is I'm making a commitment today to say, hey, why aren't we connected with the unincorporated areas? Obviously, it's going to be the supply and demand, but the bottom line is we need to connect all parts of the community. And that's the reason why these conversations are going to be important, because there's going to be a cost issue there of how we pay for it, how we subsidize it. But I believe with the 1/8 sales tax that's now been voted over to come over to VIA and to leverage those federal funds, we now have an opportunity to basically provide better services, provide essential services to the unincorporated areas and to the suburban cities. I also believe in history, there has not been a communication and relationship. And as your next county judge, I have sat down and talked to the mayors of the unincorporated areas. I was a city attorney, city prosecutor for Helotes, Leon Valley, Elmendorf, Kirby, Converse. I understand those cities, and sometimes they kind of want to be to themselves. They just want to no. But if they want the services, they want to be part of this multimodal transportation. They want to be part connected. And that's what's going to happen, is that as we develop economic development, and my commitment is to make sure that we are growing with economic development, multimodal transportation, VIA is going to be essential, and it's going to be up to the leadership and make sure that whoever I point to that VIA board is committed to make sure that we have access. And then the last question was?
It was about all the money spent downtown to beautify, that the
Yes.
millions of dollars spent, and
I'll
what about...
just say real quick, because I'm running out of time.
Okay.
I am committed to a back-to-basics budget, bare necessities, which we will focus in on the true infrastructure of our county, and that's the children and families. I applaud Judge Wolf and the legacy projects, but let's focus in on what's most important, and that's the children, the families, and the seniors of our community. Thank y'all very much.
A question that came from the audience or from online, I'm not sure, and it will go to Judge Sakai first. Do you think that health care is equally as accessible in South Bexar County as it is in North Bexar County?
The first answer is no, but I will applaud our current Commissioner's Court. We're going to have a new hospital right by Texas A&M San Antonio. So I want to applaud Judge Wolf and Commissioner Rebecca Clay Flores for the commitment. There's also a second hospital that's going to go up at Retama in the northeast sector for the eastern sector of the community, and I applaud Judge Wolf and Commissioner Calvert. Obviously, those are the inequities that we have always traditionally had. If we go back and we remember that UTSA was planted on the way north side, and it's taken over generations to make sure that we've gotten access in a matter of equity. And so that is also an issue with healthcare, is to make sure that all parts of our community have access. And that is the reason why the Commissioner's Court is committed to what's called a public health entity. And I see the opportunity with that to equalize the disparity we have in our communities, especially here in the South Side. We got to deal with wellness. We got to deal with nutrition. We got to deal with diabetes and obesity, which are the diseases that plague our community. And that's the reason why nutrition is going to have to be a very important part of public health. And that's why we have to create public-private partnerships. I'm committed to work with the food bank, Eric Cooper, to make sure that we don't have food desert. Commissioner Calvert created an urban farm over on the east side. I want an urban farm on the south side that we can grow fresh fruits and vegetables in order that we can give it back to the community. Those are the cutting edge, innovative ideas that I have as your next county judge. Thank you very much for that great question.
Do you think that healthcare is as accessible on the South Bexar County as it is in North Bexar County?
I don't. And it's the reason as a county commissioner that I advocated for a big idea. And that was a potential merger between Metro Health at the city and UHS at the county. Metro Health has been severely underfunded over the years. In fact, it probably was the first place that the city went to cut when they were looking for cuts. And guess what? Folks, we saw Metro Health stumble mightily out of the gate when it came to the pandemic. 6 different changes in leadership. Almost locked in the Stone Ages, couldn't figure out how to contact trace. In the meantime, though, University Health System, a $2.8 or $3 billion enterprise, stood up a vaccination site at Wonderland Mall almost overnight. And so as we look at the opportunity, and I know, Elaine, your question was not about city-county consolidation, but I think it's a big domino that could fall in the right direction and scale and impact healthcare in a way that we have never seen before. If you were able to merge Metro Health at the city with University Health System at the county, give the city a couple of seats on the board of UHS so they're weighing into the decision-making regarding the healthcare crisis that we have in this community as a result of the poverty rate that we still have in this community, I'm looking to scale impact because what did we see during COVID? It underscored morbid obesity, heart disease, diabetes. We still have a problem with that. When you talk to vascular surgeons all over town, we are cutting folks' limbs off in far too great a number than we need to because of the problem that we have with diabetes. If we merge these two entities together, what can we do? And yes, the first step, the judge and I talked about that, was creating a public health entity at the county. That's the first step to the merger that I'm talking about, to really be able to scale healthcare in a way that we have never seen before. Folks, there is a way to be able to do this, but we've got to make sure that healthcare is affordable, and we have to make sure that healthcare is accessible. And yes, as a Republican standing on this stage, I'm going to advocate for Medicaid expansion into the state of Texas because it's necessary to do that.
Okay, Trish, you get the next question first. And it's related to healthcare. If elected, what would you like to be done with Robert B. Greene? Should it be demolished? Should healthcare continue in that building?
So obviously, Robert B. Greene, a big name here in San Antonio, that facility, an institution. Somebody who was born and raised here in San Antonio, a native San Antonio, who, by the way, never left. Parents were here, I stayed here, founded 2 businesses here. People look at me now and they're like, what do you mean you never left San Antonio? And I'm like, that's not such an odd thing. The opportunity was afforded to me here. My mother always taught me 2 things. To whom much is given, much is expected. And so I feel like that's what I've done the better part of my career. I've given back to this community in a very big way. Also, number 2, she said, when you count the pennies, the dollars will take care of themselves. And so what do we look? What is the opportunity associated with Robert B. Greene? How do we make it more effective under a healthcare structure that I'm talking about? Robert B. Greene could play in to a merger between Metro Health, UHS, and the Robert B. Greene, and especially if we could make the Robert B. Greene be focused really on veterans and veterans' health. I know we've got a VA hospital to be able to do that, but I've heard horror stories about what happens sometimes at the VA hospital. They do good work, but they could do better, but we've got to have more accessibility associated with that. And so there is an opportunity here, I think, for Robert B. Greene to play into that. You can look, and look, I'm not opposed to it, Elaine, as I've looked at moving the jail out of the west side of San Antonio, which is another big idea. What do we do with that? Because what is it? It is a barrier to poverty, keeping people in poverty, and economic development, and bridging the wage gap. Because there's no excuse. Look, I haven't been in office 26 years. I've been a small business person. I've been giving back to this community and hiring people and creating jobs for people the better part of 25 years. But the poverty rate is the same rate that we've had here in San Antonio and Bexar County since 1984, since I graduated from high school. There are ways that we can think to move that needle, and it starts with health care. Thank you.
What do you do with Robert B. Greene?
We keep it going. But at the same time, this is what I want to do as your county judge. We need to sit down and we need to evaluate its services. We need to see with data, with metrics, analytics, are they delivering the type of services we need? And I need to have you at the table to say, look, this is what's going on. This is the reason why we're having these issues in our community. Because if the seniors basically are disconnected, because we go back to that transportation issue and say, look, how do we move around? And that is an issue that I want to see University Hospital System and VIA work together so they basically, transportation and healthcare come together. One of the things that I've learned as a judge, as I worked on the children and families, is you got to bring all the stakeholders together. And then you got to figure out what the problems are, and then you got to find the solutions. And sometimes it's easy, sometimes it's not a big push, but what we have to make sure in regards to the question, we have to have a basis of the Robert B. Greene in the community. We have to have access, and that is the reason why I support the Robert B. Greene. And we must continue to be on the front end and be proactive on the prevention. And that's the reason why I am totally all in with the public health entity when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to wellness, when it comes to dealing with education and outreach in regards to those diseases of obesity and diabetes. We need to get ahead. We got to stimulate physical exercise. We've got to make sure our parks and our linear parks and our trails and our sidewalks are all built together to get people out and exercise. And that's how we're going to create a healthier community, but we have to have the infrastructure, and that's why I'm committed to the Robert B. Greene.
I love this next, oh, yes, of course. I love this next question because of its simplicity and the heartfelt nature of it. So this one goes to you first, Judge. Mm-hmm. Why are you really running for county judge?
Why am I really running for county judge?
Yeah, obviously this person doubts why you're really running or why Trish is really running. So
Right.
It's your opportunity to sell yourself.
When I started 40 years ago and was that section chief, a rookie prosecutor, and started on my journey and got in charge and was given a section chief position because of what I consider, my integrity, my dedication, my hard work. And then I moved over, and Judge Andy Morales and Judge John Specia said, hey, Judge Sakai, you need to become this judge of the children's court. And I said, how much you gonna pay me? And they go, oh, that's not enough money, guys. And I'll be honest with you, I had a lucrative private practice, but you know what? They convinced me that I was the right person for that job. And I decided to balance that with what I could do for my family and having a 40-hour job and taking care of my kids to the Little League and to all the youth activities. And then when Judge Specia stepped down, they said, you know what, Judge, you're a great judge, but you may not be able to win in this county because you're not Hispanic. And I said, well, I think I've proven myself. And so I stepped up to be your judge, elected judge, as a Democrat of the 225th District Court. And I served for 4 terms. So when Judge Wolf said, you know what, I am signaling that I'm going to retire, I sat down with him and Tracy and I said, hey, Judge Wolf, are you really going to retire? Because, you've been saying that. He goes, no, I'm really going to do it. So I said, Judge, with all due respect, I want to be the next county judge. I want to continue my public service. I am a servant leader for my community. I have made a difference for the children and families of this community, and I can do more as county judge and make sure that we move forward in a very unified way, that I bring people together. I will find the solutions to the complex problems, and that is the experience I bring to you. My parents, my father, a Japanese-American farmer, taught me about hard work, about integrity, and about humility. And those are the value sets that I will bring to the bench, to the county commissioner's court as your next county judge. That's why I want to be your next county judge. Thank y'all very much.
Okay, Trish, why are you really running for county judge?
Sir, I totally agree with Mr. Sakai. Servant leadership is incredibly important. Those are the values that my hardworking parents instilled in me as the youngest of 6 children, fighting over one bathroom and seconds at the dinner table, and sometimes living hand to mouth. It was about hard work. It was about a hard work ethic, but it was also about giving back. And so there are ways to be a servant leader without necessarily being elected to office. I'll give you a few examples. I've worked on SAISD bond elections, passed them since 2002. For equity, to not just facilities, but increasing graduation rates in the largest urban county in Bexar County, or in the state of Texas. Also did that in Northeast Independent School District. The first campaign I ever worked on, which by the way, completely pro bono, was the fluoridation of San Antonio's water system. It had failed twice. When I managed that campaign, the 3rd time we passed it, and guess what? Who did it impact the most? It impacted children on the south and the west and the east sides of San Antonio that could not afford good oral care or dentistry. Putting fluoride into the water system was a game changer regarding what they call cavities in the teeth, because if you get those, it leads to whole systemic issues in your body. Children don't deserve that. Also worked on cyberbullying legislation, completely pro bono, when a young man hung himself after being severely cyberbullied. And not just David Molak, but a young man at Central Catholic that had cancer. And kids were bullying him online, saying, just take your life right now because you look so bad, we don't need to look at it anymore. I walked the halls of the legislature, didn't charge people a penny for that, because why? Now we have stricter ramifications to protect our children from cyberbullying. Because why? Because in my heart, I am a servant leader, and because in my heart, it's not about money. It's about the right thing to do for people. It's about kindness and decency and lifting this community up. That's why I'm running to be your next Bexar County judge. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, you get this question first now. The lack of internet access can translate to missed educational, telemedicine, and employment opportunities, putting distressed communities at further disadvantage during the pandemic. How will you address digital inclusivity, and how will you make sure older adults aren't left behind?
A couple things. I find myself a little bit in the middle because I had aging parents, being the youngest of 6 children, so I was the youngest, and then I had children later in life. So I found myself in between aging parents, and also I've got 2 teenagers, the blessings of my life. My daughter is 17 years old, and my son is 20 years old. And so, yeah, his senior year was stripped away from him during COVID as a result of what happened, and it was tough. Like I said, we had access to internet, but there is no question. It's unacceptable that we had children that were sitting in the parking lot at the AT&T Center trying to get onto Wi-Fi. What age do we live in? It's not right. And so, yes, we have a new digital inclusive authority here in Bexar County and San Antonio. And so I had conversations with them. And as a commissioner, I appropriated money for that effort because we have to make sure whoever is the next judge, there has got to be county-wide Wi-Fi. Not just for one section of San Antonio or Bexar County, but for everyone, to include seniors too. And so we struggled a little bit when I talked about my mom during COVID. I mean, COVID was tough on seniors because of why? the isolation associated with it, and me trying to walk my mom because the only way that we could see her or talk to her was to guide her through an iPad that she had to be able to try to access us, because that was the only thing that kept her motivated to keep going. And so yes, when we talk about inclusivity regarding bridging the digital divide and appropriating more money and working with our internet providers, who, by the way, they need to bring skin into the game and do this too, because they've been making a lot of money off of all of us for a very, very long time. And so the opportunity for them to come with us and work with the county to appropriate public monies, but also them coming to the table too, is critical to the success of this community, bringing again people out of poverty and making sure that education, not just for our young people, but for our seniors, continues. Thank you.
Judge, the lack of internet access can translate into missed educational, telemedicine, and employment opportunities, putting distressed communities at further disadvantage during the pandemic. How will you address digital inclusivity, and how will you make sure older adults aren't left behind?
I think I addressed it earlier by saying my commitment to the digital divide is to treat high-speed internet connectivity as a basic utility, much like electricity or water. And I'm looking to create a public internet entity in order to develop that type of infrastructure to provide that for all the citizens, both the youth, the seniors, disabled people, the small businesses who need internet connectivity to succeed. We truly have to recognize, and this is really the opportunity and with the AARP and the NOWCastSA to work together, because it's going to take basically advocacy to make sure that we commit to that, and I'm committing as your next county judge to put those money resources to develop the high-speed internet for all parts of our county. We need outreach. In other words, how do we get people to connect? And then we need education. And that's the essence of AARP. That's what y'all do day in and day out. And that's the reason why it's going to be a public-private partnership in order to deal with the digital divide and to deal with the internet connectivity. That is a problem, and I am suggesting a solution. We're going to partner up, and we're going to provide, the county's going along with bringing all the other stakeholders. We've got to get the city of San Antonio, the suburban cities, and the state and the federal government with all the resources in order to provide that basic need. And so my commitment to the digital divide is we just got to do it. And that is a solution I'm going to accomplish as your next county judge. Thank you.
Okay, Judge, you get the first crack at this question from a listener. The election administrator is retiring after this election. What are your plans, if elected, on how you would select the new administrator? Two-parter. Would you consider someone who denies the results of the 2020 presidential election?
Absolutely not, to put that type of person. Obviously, the person that's currently there is Jackie Callanan. She has served with great distinction as election administrator. The elections department is a county department, and that's one department that runs it for everybody. And so that has worked well, but that is the reason why I'm a true believer in the rule of law. Because what we have now is we have the threats of democracy, people that are challenging the essence of integrity and the elections and the results, and saying, well, the current president isn't a legitimate president. No, we need to push back. And that's why I'm committed to the rule of law, to uphold the Constitution and making sure. I will tell you right now, our elections here in Bexar County and in the state of Texas are secure, they're without fraud, and they're valid elections. And so in regards to possibility of Jackie Callanan, she has signaled that she wants to step down. I want a nationwide search to get the best person, the best qualified person there. And I'm going to be a little bit, don't want to be misinterpreted, but I want somebody that has technology, that has innovation and it's out of box. What we had in the primary, and this was documented through my campaign, was we had a lot of seniors who were denied their right to vote on the mail-in. And that is unacceptable and a violation of their constitutional rights. And that's something that I want to eliminate. And we're going to have to do that with an election department that is going to bring us up with the technology so that we connect. We get that high-speed internet so that people are connected, and we can then communicate and make sure that our seniors are never, ever disenfranchised. And that's my commitment to you as your next county judge.
Yeah.
Commissioner.
Listen, let me just say, God bless Jackie Callahan. I've been friends with Jackie for a very, very long time, having worked on elections over the years. And she's done a yeoman's job in that seat for a number of years, but she's also been under attack, and she's also been under fire. And I think sometimes unnecessarily associated with it. And the threats that have come in to the elections office, like I said, are unacceptable. They're to be condemned, actually. Condemned. Because I have been on the record, and I continue to be on the record, the election was not stolen. So do we have to have safeguards in place so that people feel more comfortable voting? Absolutely. And you know what? To Jackie's credit, she has opened up the elections office. She has brought Democrats and Republicans and independents through there, whatever, to see what the process is and what she's done to even make things more secure. But yes, we should not be making things harder on seniors to be able to vote. However, I'll offer a caveat. We also have to make sure that we don't have seniors who are targeted and persuaded unknowingly into doing things that are unethical. That's a hard thing to do sometimes. But most importantly, as Jackie looks at retirement, she is to be celebrated. She is to be lauded for the job that she has done for the county over the years, because she's a great lady. But as we look at the next person that comes into this seat, yes, we're going to have to look at a search, whether it's, national, and we look across the United States, but we also look here locally too, because sometimes the best talent is to be found locally here in San Antonio and Bexar County. I can think of a couple of people off the top of my head. But it is going to have to be somebody who's got backbone. It's going to have to be somebody who's wicked smart when it comes to innovating regarding technology, because as we know, we live in a society that is constant regarding the innovation and the threats on security and hacking and cybersecurity issues, et cetera. So you're going to have somebody in that position that understands all of those issues. So let me just say, I'm committed to a thorough and robust process on whoever replaces Jackie Callahan, and we are not going to be suppressing the vote. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, this one will go to you first, and it comes from a listener. And it's a really long question, so I'm going to try to abbreviate here. Recent reports by the U.S. Census found that we have the highest rate of poverty of any community. I guess they're talking about the metropolitan area. As county judge, how do you see the role of county government with regard to housing, healthcare, transportation intersected with poverty?
Boy, that's a loaded question, because all of those things contribute to the poverty rate that we have here in San Antonio. I talked about it before, and I've really been the only candidate running for Bexar County Judge that has been talking about generational poverty and how do we pull people out of generational poverty. So if we look at the big idea that I have, that I know my opponent doesn't agree with, moving the Bexar County Jail out of the near west side, which, by the way, the west side has been dumped on for far too long. You have Haven for Hope, which does a great job. It does, regarding the homeless. But then you've got that whammy coupled with the Bexar County Jail that's right there too. It is a barrier to economic development, and it keeps people in poverty, because guess what? The poorest zip code that we have here in Bexar County is where? And has been for 40 years, 78207. Where is it located? Right behind the Bexar County Jail. Until such time as we look at things differently and what that looks like. And look, we at least have to explore the issue associated with that. Cost-benefit analysis. What are the jobs that would be created? What is the economic impact associated with it? If we decide after we do that study, because the job as judge and the CEO of the county is to not say no to bold ideas that will move people out of poverty. It is to say, yes, we will explore it and see what we can do and how we might be able to move the needle. And if it doesn't pan out or it's too much, then we don't do it, but we divert to other ways to be able to pull people out of poverty, because that is the problem that we have here, folks. It is generational poverty. So it is removing the barriers to pull people out of poverty, because guess what? A rising tide floats all boats, right? It is the things that we've talked about: accessibility and affordability to healthcare, potential merger between Metro Health and UHS. It is about transportation and mobility regarding linear parks, and also making sure that we have not just transportation all the way to the unincorporated areas, but that we also have countywide Wi-Fi. It's all of it together.
Okay, Judge, would you like me to repeat the question? Recent reports by the U.S. Census found that we have the highest rate of poverty of any community. As county judge, how do you see the role of county government with regards to housing, healthcare, and transportation intersected with poverty rates?
Although it might sound like a loaded question, it isn't. In fact, the answer is in the question in itself. And that's the ability to recognize all those points that you pointed out that create the highest rate of poverty. That is really the weakest part of Bexar County, especially when we look at the unincorporated areas and areas that have been traditionally neglected because of basically equity. They've always gone to other parts of the county. And so what I said earlier all falls into place if you really hear it. It's about housing and to make sure that the seniors, especially as seniors get to age in place, that we have communications with the neighborhood association so that gentrification isn't pushing people out and pricing them out. We're going to have to lower those property taxes, and understanding that we've got to provide basic services, but we're going to have to keep the lid on property taxes so that the seniors can basically not be priced out of their homes. We're also going to have that transportation question so that when we deal with the healthcare access, we got to have VIA and University Hospital system talking to each other so that seniors can have access to healthcare. We've also identified one of the basic infrastructure issues with the digital divide, and that we need high-speed internet in order for that people will be connected to healthcare, their telemedicine, their small businesses that will connect in order to so they succeed in their community. And so the answer to that question is to focus in on what those problems are, bring the stakeholders together, bring the experts together, and that's my commitment to you, is to identify those problems, and then let's come together as a community and come up with those solutions. And I have no doubt that we can overcome and deal with the issue of poverty and generational poverty and overcome it, and we're going to have to also focus in, and Elaine, you've covered that with education in our public school system, and I'll cover that later.
Okay, Judge, you get the first try at this question. Describe your management style as county judge and how you would have relationships with fellow members of the court and other county administrators and leaders.
Sure. Well, you got to look at record, right? You got to look at reputation. You got to look at character. For 26 years as your district court judge, I have maintained the highest standard of integrity. I've been having some of the toughest decisions in regards to the life and death of the children and families that come into the court system. And so I've had to make tough decisions, and those are tough decisions I will have to continue to make as county judge, especially if we live in the post-COVID. We know COVID was a once-in-a-lifetime circumstance, and hopefully by our vaccination, our efforts, and our group coming together, we're not going to be there again. But at the same time, we must be prepared to make some tough decisions, especially when we have the climate change issues with drought and heat and possibly the failure of the grid. Those are all emergency preparedness that what we need to do. And what is going to be so crucial as your leader is the ability to listen, and listen intently, the ability to hear both sides of a dispute and then say, make a decision. And I think that's what's crucial for any elected official, is to make a decision and then to be able to explain it to the people to either accept it or not and move on. And those are going to be what is going to be required of the next county judge. Are you going to be able to work with all the elected officials? Are you going to be able to work with the judges? Are you going to be able to work with the sheriff on that complicated issue on the jail? Are we going to be able to work with all the county department heads? And what I have done as your children's court judge is come up with the family drug court, early childhood court, our college-bound doctor for foster kids, innovative cutting-edge programs that are the model for not only the state, for our nation, because it was the right thing to do for our children and families, and that's my commitment to you as your next county judge, is to always focus in and make sure that the children, families, and the seniors are always taken into consideration in any decision. Thank y'all very much.
Okay, describe your management style and how you have your relationships with other members of the court as well as county officials.
So management style has been very important. Obviously, as a small business owner and having employed up to 100 people at one time and had to listen to employees, and sometimes as a small business owner, you're not quite big enough to have a separate HR department, but you have to make decisions on the fly. But always an open door policy. It was always about managing up people and making them better people. Yes, it was about holding them accountable and asking them tough questions. But this is what happens when you push people a little bit. They achieve things that they didn't think they could achieve. And they made things better, not just for themselves, but for the overall company. So at the court, listen, it's no secret I was the only Republican on the court. But I reached across the aisle, bipartisan support. Judge Nelson Wolf, Commissioner Taubey Calvert were with me on several different initiatives when I was on the court that I think have made a huge difference here. One of them, lower the property tax rate to the lowest it's been in 25 years. Yes, it was small, but I cultivated 2 votes to be able to do that, and now it's headed in the right direction. Teed up a homestead exemption that didn't occur at the county, not just at the county, but the Bexar County Hospital District. Number 2, the elder fraud unit restored to the DA's office. Cultivated 2 Democratic votes to be able to do that too, because it was the right thing to do, and we had a 1,200 case backlog. Number 3, body camera turnaround policy, 10 days, the strictest really in the state, because 9 times out of 10, it exonerates 99% of police officers, but it also brings closure to families who are looking for that closure. Cultivated 2 Democratic votes to be able to get that done. A family leave policy that did not exist at the county before. Cultivated 2 Democratic votes so that people were not taking sick time and comp time to have their children, that they could take paid leave to be able to adopt children or have births of children. And then my proudest moment on the court was an appropriation of more than $300 million in domestic violence funding for the DA's office and the courts so that we can combat the scourge, the public health scourge in Bexar County that's known as domestic violence. That's the kind of leadership I will provide. I will reach across the aisle to be able to get it done, and it will be impactful. Thank you.
I realize now that I don't have my cell phone or a watch. So I have no idea what the time is. So someone somewhere needs to wave when I need to ask the last question or get to closing statements, okay? Somebody, Lisa, you'll be the person. Okay, I'm okay. All right, thank you. Okay, who gets the first crack at this next question? Judge?
Sure.
Okay, Judge.
Okay.
You have a $10 million surplus.
Oh my.
Can you believe it? Wouldn't that be great? $10 million. How do you spend it?
First and foremost, what we need to do is we need to bring everybody to the table. And we need a leader who's willing to listen to everybody, especially the community, especially groups such as the seniors and the AARP, who will help educate and help illuminate what the issues are for seniors so that we can then we're going to have to prioritize. Now, and the reality is, with a $2 billion budget, $10 million,
It's not enough?
Well, no.
It's not too much?
No,
Okay.
no, you know, and that's the thing is, we can lower the taxes and then reduce the budget, but then we've got to cut services. But if we've got a surplus, we've got to be very smart with that. And that's the reason why it's going to take communication. We talk to each other. We listen to each other. We don't argue and yell at each other. We collaborate, which collaborate means, okay, I think we should do this. No, I think we should do that. And we need to have that type of dialogue. And then we need to coordinate, which means we have to execute. We've got to come to a plan and process. And so we'll have to establish the priorities if we have a $10 million surplus. I am committed to make sure that any type of budget expenditure has to be child-centric and family-focused. It has to make a difference in our community, whether it's in capacity of housing. We got a chronic homeless. We've got basically people living on the streets, and that's a separate issue. And I'll open that with, we've got to deal with the veterans who have mental health issues. And that's why a commitment to mental health and drug and alcohol rehabilitation is so crucial. So if you ask me, Judge, you just got to commit to something, I'll commit to the access to mental health and to drug and alcohol rehabilitation, because I saw that as game changers in children's court. I saw that how we put parents and children back together. And obviously we have the issue of grandparents raising grandchildren because of all those abuse and neglect issues. So, I can go on all night long on how we can spend that $10 million.
We don't want you to go on all night long.
Thank y'all very much.
Okay,
Yeah.
Commissioner, maybe 10 million isn't enough to make it juicy enough, but what would you do?
Yeah. Elaine, you're right. $10 million is not a whole lot of money when
No,
you...
I said 10
billion?
million, 10
$10
million.
Yeah, 10 million. It's not a whole lot of money in the big scheme of things when you look at close to a $3 billion budget, but you got money left over to be able to move the needle. Yes, absolutely. You've got to listen to people. But part of being a leader, and I feel like for the past 7 months, I've been interviewing for this job as the CEO of the county. By the way, the judge of the county is called a judge only in name only by the Texas Constitution. You're not deciding guilt or innocence. You are managing a $2.8 billion budget, and you're appropriating money, whether it's a surplus or whether it's a deficit. What does that look like? It's something I've done all my life for 25 years. And so as we look at what we're doing and the ARPA monies that were available and the buckets that we identified, really, it was my best time, I felt like, on the court and collaborating with my colleagues to figure out where those ARPA monies were going to be spent. But I'll tell you, there are two places I think it needs to go, because I've heard it loudly and clearly. Small businesses are the backbone of this economy. 85% of this economy is built on the backs of small businesses who were shut down during COVID, and many of them never recovered. So we've got to do a better job at the county supporting small businesses and making sure that they're thriving and prospering, like Golden Star over on the west side, where I launched my campaign, who, by the way, as a result of construction, it's a 90-year legacy business. And they have dipped into $150,000 in retirement savings to sustain that business because government has gotten in the way. So it's not just COVID, it's construction and not taking small businesses. And many of you here may be generational small businesses, but we've got to do a better job with how we're planning regarding construction projects and appropriating funding regarding small businesses. And then number two, we got to do more about animal care services. I got 6 rescues at home, and we're not doing enough regarding the stray population that we have here or rescues. And that's another opportunity for city-county consolidation when it comes to animal care services. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, this is the new question for you from the audience. How would you use county resources to help seniors age in place through repairing, rehabbing, or restoring their homes?
So I think that's a really important question as we talk about aging in place. I talk about it a lot as I visited this county, and it's a big county, whether I've been at the Thompson Neighborhood Association or Los Jardines on the west side, whether I've been at Dignity Hill and Denver Heights on the east side, Harmony Hills on the north side, or the south side neighborhoods too. Been there, talked to those folks, and they talk about property taxes and being taxed out of their homes. What are we doing? Highland Hills, Highland Park, What are we doing to keep people in their homes? So I was proud to lead the effort on Commissioner's Court regarding a property tax reduction, because there's a lot of fat in the budget that we got to take a look at that need to be cut. We don't necessarily cut women's and children's services. I would never do that. But we can't be taxing people out of their homes either. And so what does that look like? Yes, the rehab program through ACOG, Alma Area Council of Governments, I think is a great opportunity, but we've got to educate people and we have to advocate. And so when I talk about that one-stop center for seniors, to be able to know about the programs that exist, that's critically important because there is money that's not being accessed. There are rehab programs available through ACOG. There are housing rehab construction programs available through the city and also the county. But it is about consolidation of those efforts to make sure that people know about it and they access it, because we don't want to be leaving money on the table. The other thing that we have to think about is this. Whoever gets this job as the next Bexar County judge in 2 weeks, the special session starts. And so one of those ways about having people age in place and not taxing people out of their homes, because we have done just about all we can do regarding property taxes at the county and the city. The legislature has to do more. There is something called a legacy bill, which, by the way, has failed in the past 2 sessions. I'll be marching those halls advocating for it because it keeps seniors in their homes. People who have lived there generationally, 2 to 3 generations, and have faced an appraisal of 80 to 120% are exempted from their taxes. That is how we keep seniors in their homes. Thank you.
Okay, the question is, how would you use, is this it? Hold on. Oh yes, how would you use county resources to help seniors age in place through repairing, rehabilitating, or restoring their homes?
That's a great question. What we need to do is focus in on rehab. And one of the conversations I've had with some of the nonprofits, and that is something I've been totally committed to as your children's court judges, create those public-private partnerships with those innovative programs. And I want to bring that type of model to Commissioner's Court and to the county. We need to partner up with the nonprofits that work with the housing rehab. We have the Merced Housing, we have Prospera, we have our CASA, we have NRP that are developing housing, affordable housing. And what we need to do, and an example of that, is I believe it's called alternate dwelling units, and that is so that seniors can get loans, low interest loans, or incentives in order to build out their garage or back apartment in order that they can rent it out in order to supplement income. So that is an innovative, cutting-edge idea that I'm committed to as your next county judge, is to find ways to help support the seniors so that they can age in place. Obviously, the big issue is property taxes, and I've committed to control those property taxes, but at the same time, what the big issue there is appraisals, and that is an extension of the state that works with the comptroller, but the county puts a county commissioner on the BCAD, the Bexar County Appraisal District Board, and I want that particular commissioner to hold the chief appraiser and BCAD, the appraisal district, accountable. When we get our tax bills, we're just like, how did that valuation come about? And so there are a multitude of ways that what we need to do is look at what those problems are and then come up with the solutions, and that's holding people accountable. And I want to see more accountability in that appraisal district.
Okay, Judge, you get the first try at this one, and it sounds like a yes or no question,
Okay.
but really what the questioner wants is you to expand on this. Will there be another correctional institution in the county's future?
If you're talking about the correctional institution as a jail,
Yes.
no. And let me just say this: to build another jail is another $1 billion, and that is a budget buster. And we're not going to be able to lower taxes. We're not going to be able to focus in on those programs such as mental health services or drug and alcohol rehabilitation. I'm committed to restorative justice. I'm committed. Restorative justice means this in our justice system. And having been a judge, I've got that's in my wheelhouse. And what restorative justice means is focusing on what is positive about the people that come in our system, whether it's criminal cases, child abuse cases, child support cases, family law cases, whatever. We want to focus in on what's positive. And what we learned with our specialty courts, my family drug court, our early childhood court, our college-bound docket, is what we can do is empower people, transform people. But you have to provide mental health services. You have to provide drug and alcohol rehabilitation. You have to help them understand that domestic violence is unacceptable. And that is another big issue of what is plaguing our community is domestic violence. And I'm committed to continue and I created the Collaborative Commission on Domestic Violence in order to deal with the issues of domestic violence. We've learned that if we just lock people up, especially indigent people or people that are mentally ill, that's not fixing anything. That's not going to fix the homeless situation. And so what we need to do is figure out from a housing first perspective for those chronic homeless, how do we move those veterans with PTSD? How do we move those veterans that have mental health issues? And what we need to do is connect with them. And I want to partner with the military so that we have a call of duty to bring those veterans back in, get them off the streets, and get them on the path to rehabilitation and transformation. That's my commitment to you as your next county judge.
Okay, it's a yes/no question, but you can expand on this. Will there be another correctional institution in the county's future?
So I think my answer is yes, there could be, but I think it's got to be explored. I know my opponent says no, and it's a billion-dollar budget buster. There's no proof of that because it hasn't really been studied yet. What I'm saying is we have to explore the opportunity. That is what leadership is about, is exploring the opportunity. And moving the jail, I'm going to reiterate it, does two things. It brings people out of poverty in an area that has suffered for far too long. That jail was built back in the 1980s. The county currently is throwing money hand over fist. By the way, the air conditioning just went out last week. I don't think they've got it fixed yet, but people were sweltering in 90-degree temperatures there. We also had a female detention guard who had to call and file a police report to be relieved of her shift to go pick up her children. The conditions, ladies and gentlemen, in that jail are inhumane. You don't just sit back and say no. What you say is, we can do better. Not just by the people that work there to have humane conditions, but by the inmates that are in there too. I mean, we have inmates that have learned to game the locks that are in there. We have security issues. We had folks there 3 years ago were walking out of the jail. You didn't even need a get out of jail free card. But we're going to just say no. We're not going to look at the opportunity. And so that's specific to the jail. But specific to, what is the opportunity cost associated with not moving that jail out of the west side, out of the near west side, when you have a UTSA data center that's going up, when you have the SCOBY facility that's there that's being transformed into a multi-use facility. They want something different. And I guarantee you, after visiting churches and talking to people over on the west side, and by the way, the homeless population that's under the bridge, they want better. And not only do they want better, but they should demand better out of leadership. That is what I will bring to the office of Bexar County Judge.
Okay, Commissioner, you get the first try on this question from the audience. When it comes to public safety in Bexar County, what kind of priority, or what is the priority really for you?
So as I've traveled across, like I said, I've visited neighborhoods across the county, what is the number one issue? It is crime, which is up to the highest rate it's been in more than 40 years. It is lawlessness, and it is public safety. For far too long, I don't think the county has really prioritized public safety in the way that it needs to be. It needs to be number one. And some of that comes with paying our deputy sheriffs more than what we pay them right now. I was the county commissioner that asked for a consultant to come in and study the problems that we had at the jail. And what has come back? That we need to pay our deputies more, because guess what happens? We train them with good people that are here, and then they decide, hey, I want to go over to SAPD because they got better benefits and they got better pay. It's because we don't prioritize public safety at the county, and we haven't. And so we have to, for the citizens of this community, One of the proudest days, again, that I had on the court was talking about law enforcement. It's not just about the sheriff's department. It's about the county constables. And by the way, who do a great job with community policing. It is not, I would like to say that there's crossover, but there's really not. And really, the state constitution, again, mandates that we have county constables. And so they got to be doing good things, right? They got cut from the budget 2 years before I got onto the court. When I came back onto the court, I said, no, we have some great constables that are in place. We're going to beef up the county constables' offices. And so, in the budget, I put in more monies for 12 more constables, not just for community policing efforts, but to serve temporary protective orders and temporary restraining orders, because the civil division of the sheriff's office had been gutted, and there were stacks of temporary protective orders and temporary restraining orders that were not being served. And my point was, women and children do not need to be living in fear. And if county constables have the ability to be able to serve those orders, we need to be appropriating money to make sure they're serving those orders. That's what we need to be doing to protect this community. So at the end of the day, Elaine, it has to be about a priority in public service, and I was happy to be down at court when the sheriff was fighting for more officers as part of the budget. Thank you.
Judge, what's your priority, public safety priority for the county?
Well, first and foremost, I am a supporter of law enforcement. I want to make sure under the rule of law that people are held accountable and that people are punished accordingly and appropriately under restorative justice principles. And what that means is low-level offenders, indigent people, they don't need to be in the jail system. And I support our district attorney on his sign and release that lowers the burden on, now, violent offenders, people who hurt children, people who commit sexual assaults, homicides. Unfortunately, we got a juvenile crime issue, and I've been paying attention to that. Juvenile crime's up. And my analysis and what I get from the intelligence is juvenile gangs are back up. And I was there in the 90s when we had what San Antonio was known as a drive-by capital. So I know what we need to do when we have those situations. We have to be able to deal with those issues, and we may well have to increase, and I criticized our county manager who recommended that there be no increase in the number of deputies. I just found that ridiculous as a unilateral decision that the Commissioner's Court ultimately overruled. The unincorporated areas is where the county deputies and the sheriff has to cover, along with the constables. But the issue is, as we know, the growth is going to go to the unincorporated areas. And so we must stay committed to law enforcement. I will always back the blue, the men and women who protect us. The city of San Antonio is increasing its officers by 130. They got a grant that will also provide that increase. And that's what we need to do. We need to create those partnerships with the state and the federal government to deal with those issues. But at the same time, let us always remember that what we cannot do is lock people up and fill the jails up with people who are poor and mentally ill.
Okay, these two questions are really outside the scope of county government, but I guess the writer of these questions wanted to know what you think and what you could do as the chief executive of the county. So this one, Judge, will go to you first. How can TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation, be held accountable to keep our highways clean and maintained? We've seen this problem.
Sure. Well, as I indicated earlier, it's going to take a conversation. We're going to have to communicate with TxDOT. That's an issue that obviously, yes, we got to make sure that our roadways are clear and clean and that we have multimodal transportation to deal with the road congestion issues that are out there. And that is really, to try to give you the essence of my leadership, is what I've repeated. It's about the ability to bring people to the table and the ability to listen and the ability to identify those problems and then come up with solutions. So in regards to help keeping the roadways clear, how the county could perhaps partner up is I would then go to our judges in our criminal justice system and say, hey, Don't we have a bunch of probationers that need to do community service? Can't we get them to go pick up some trash? Can't we get them to clean our roadways and clean our neighborhoods? And that is an example of the communication, the collaboration, and the coordination to come up with a solution to a problem. Now, we have obviously other issues in regards to TxDOT, and we've got to make sure that we've got multimodal transportation. That's the reason why VIA needs to be at the table. They and that leadership needs to be understanding that we've got to connect transportation to the public health. We've got to connect transportation to the issues that are plaguing our community. And so as your next county judge, I don't have all the answers for you tonight, but I also know how to fix things. And I've got a proven track record from as your children's court judge. Thank y'all very much.
Commissioner, the question is about TxDOT and how we hold them accountable to clean up, to maintain roads, even from the county perspective.
Yeah. Well, the good news is we have somebody who leads TxDOT. His name is Bruce Bugg, who's from San Antonio. So we should have a relationship with Bruce Bugg, who's the chairman of TxDOT and the Texas Transportation Commission, who weighs into this. So one of the things that we've got to stop doing is poking the bear and antagonizing the bear. We saw what happened regarding Broadway and the construction project on Broadway when that was brought almost to a halt. Even though bond monies had been appropriated for Broadway, I worked on community outreach regarding that project. And by the way, I wasn't in agreement with the state coming in and saying, no, you can't do that. But some of that is because there was animosity at play between the city of San Antonio, the Texas Transportation Committee, and TxDOT. So it is about building relationships, and what do we do there? And so, yeah, I mean, we've got to build that trust back, and we've got to make sure that we're communicating what the priorities are. And it sounds like whoever asked this question thinks that we've got some trash problems that we have to mitigate. And so whether that's the partnership that we have with TxDOT to be able to do that better, but I will tell you that it's not just probationers who should be out there on the street picking up trash. I'll commit to you today, I mean, you have stretches of roadway all the time that are adopted by a county commissioner or a county judge or whatever. Like, I need to be out there helping to pick up trash if that's a priority for people. Much like we've done in the Camelot 2 subdivision. I work with Tommy Calvert, Commissioner Calvert, on the trash problem that we have there. We've got to do better, and by the way, it's not just about sitting back and listening. I've been on a listening tour for 7 months. A leader has to have vision, and you get people to buy into that vision, because we're losing a visionary in this seat who's been a visionary for 20 years. And so if you don't have a vision and how you want to be able to lead, you can't expect people to come along with you. Vision is about inspiring people and letting people know that you're not just speaking from here, but you're speaking from here. That's the kind of leadership I want to provide. Thank you.
Commissioner, you get first crack at this one, and it's in the same vein. It's asking a question outside county control, but it wants you to think about inequities in school districts and what you think about that, how you would get somebody's ear, how you would approach a fellow leader in the county about this topic.
So, I mean, this topic is really a passion project for me, just because I talked earlier about the fact the amount of work that I've done in public school districts and how important that has been. As we look at the first bond election I worked on in SAISD, Mark Twain did not have air conditioning in the school. This was back in the early 2000s. It still was hot back then. Why are kids sitting in school sweating like that? With fans that are going and they can't hear, how do you expect kids to study and make good grades? You can't. And so as you look at the bond elections that I was able to work on in SAISD and the improvements, and worked alongside Pedro Martinez, who I think was a game changer, regarding SAISD and graduation rates there. I mean, those are the things that I look at regarding, accomplishments and what fills my soul regarding public education, because I'm a product of the public education system. By the way, it's the largest vehicle by which we educate children. But to your point, Elaine, there still are inequities. I mean, one of the things we talked about, obviously, after Uvalde was taking an audit of the school districts to make sure, and I got calls from some of the police departments, even in Edgewood, saying we don't think we've got the right equipment to be able to handle an active shooter situation. And so we talked about an audit of all school districts, particularly when we look at equity. I guarantee you, equity in Edgewood regarding school security and safety, which has become a #1 issue, is not the same as it is in the Northeast Independent School District at Reagan High School. It's not. But we have to do better by all of our children. And so that kind of thinking, and then if we did that audit, and it was, and I guarantee you it would come back inequitable, what's the county going to do to be able to appropriate money to help those folks out, to make sure that police officers and school police have the equipment that they need? So it is about school security, school safety. It's also about graduation rates and what are we doing, and having a relationship with the superintendents. My work over the past 25 years, I have amazing relationships and amazing respect for the work that not just our superintendents do, but teachers all over our county. They are the unsung heroes of this country. Thank you.
This one's also, sorry, I'm thinking of all these things at once. What can be done to improve the school inequities that are lower funded school districts, and how do you address that even though the county doesn't run schools? I guess they're just asking us to think about it.
Right. Well, first and foremost, we got to acknowledge there is inequity. All right? There's inequity, there's disparity, and we can get into the reasons and the history of the discrimination and past decisions that have been made by the past leadership. What I will tell you is when I was in private practice, I had the opportunity to serve on what was called Bexar County Local Economic Development Corporation, which focused in on development back in the 80s when I was in private practice, remember? And what we did is on that nonprofit board is we focused in on the infrastructure south side. This is way before Toyota. This is way before there was ever a thought of any development out there. And what I learned there was you had to have the vision to put in the infrastructure, roads, water lines, sewer lines, telephone, and now the digital divide, high-speed internet. Those are the infrastructure that are necessary to deal with the inequities of school districts. And so now we have opportunities, and this is the current process. We have tax abatements, tax incentives, tax and reinvestment zones, TERS, opportunity. We have a public finance corporation that the Bexar County is committed to that has the opportunity to develop economic development. And as a commitment to economic development, not only do I want to bring corporate relocation, I want to look for the next Toyota, I want to look for those big corporations, but I also want a commitment that when they get these type of tax benefits, that they're going to take care of the school district. And that is what's happening now, is the school districts are being left out of that conversation. And I will work with the superintendents to make sure that when we give those type of incentives, we're not leaving out the school district, which means we're not leaving out the students of our community. That's my commitment to you as your next county judge.
So I'm told I have one more question, and I was saving one, like a softball sort of question where you get to know the candidate. So Judge, you go first. What's the first call, the first email, the first visit after you get elected?
The first visit is to get the whole county together, to put a call to the department heads, to the elected officials, to all the county employees. One thing, and I've been criticized for being a career politician, but for 26 years as a district court judge, I was a courthouse employee. I had to deal with Commissioner's Court. I had to deal with that budget office. I had to fight for the district courts, the third branch of government, for the judges. I had employees to take care of. I had a multi-million-dollar budget for the courts and make sure that the judges were treated with dignity and respect. And that's what I want to do when I first come in. I want to let our county employees from the top official to the person at the very bottom. When COVID broke out, I went to work every day. I never went home. Rachel would say, hey, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm working. And you know what my job was? Was really to take care of the county employees that were still working, and they were basically the maintenance workers and the people that couldn't get excused to work remotely. And I provided them their personal protection, the sanitation, the mask, because we weren't prepared. And that is what the next county judge must be prepared for, is to be prepared for those emergencies, to deal with the problems and then find a solution. And so when I walk in on day one, I want to know, employees, I care for you. I want to partner with you. I want to know how we can provide better customer service to the citizens of Bexar County, and let's figure out how we can protect the most precious infrastructure of our county, and that's the children, the families, and the seniors, the disabled of our community. Great question, Elaine.
Okay.
Thank you all very much.
Commissioner, you won. First call, first email, first visit. Congratulations, by the way.
Okay, well, the first call is going to be to my dad. Sorry. You know, there is nobody who's been prouder of, you know, my energy and my passion, my effort to step up to the plate to run for this office. In fact, I told you all, he was in the emergency room last night. We talked on the phone. Again today, so rather than this typical dad, right? Rather than worrying about himself, you know, what did he tell me? He said, how are you weathering these attacks? He said, I hope you're keeping your chin up high, because you know what? You're made of good stock. You're DeBerry stock. And that stuff's going to pass, and you're representing us. And so the fact that he gets to go into a voting booth, and he gets to see the family name on the ballot for somebody who only had an 8th grade education. His father told him, you're not going on to high school. You're going to stay here and you're going to work on the farm. And so my father's way out was the Air Force. And as soon as he could enlist, he got in. Because that, to him, was the great equalizer, was he didn't want to work on the farm his entire life, but at least the Air Force offered a pathway to education, which is why my dad, at the end of the day, despite having 6 children and never knowing how he was going to pay for all of us to go to college, you know, I mean, we all went on student loans and paid back those student loans, and by hook or by crook, but I can remember my dad doing times tables with me at the table, repetitive with me, because he felt like education was that important. So, yeah, Elaine, my first call, he's probably not going to be able to be at whatever election watch party there is because of his health issues, but my first phone call is going to be to him, and it's going to be to Dad. No matter the attacks or whatever I've been through, I made you proud. And I'm going to make this community proud as your next Bexar County Judge. Thank you.
Judge, you get to make your closing statement first. You have 3 minutes.
Well, thank you, Elaine. This was fun, and you know, we were able to have a conversation tonight. And for that, let me thank NOWCastSA, and let me thank AARP. Let me thank all of y'all who have taken the evening to come over and listen to 2 people who want to be your next county judge. Again, my name is Judge Peter Sakai. I was your children's court judge, local administrative judge for 26 years, and working to protect children, to empower families, and to try to improve the system, the child welfare system. And I've been given the opportunity, and I explained today why I have decided to step down from that position to step up to be your next county judge. But I wouldn't do this unless I had the support of my family. I want to recognize my wife, Rachel Sakai, who spent 32 years in the Harlandale Independent School District, and also here at Palo Alto, and then 10 years at Providence Catholic High School. I believe my sister, Kathy Sakai, the retired HEB pharmacist, is in the house. And so those 2 women are an important part of why I'm standing here today asking for your support and asking for your vote. This election is about proven leadership. It's about the integrity, the character, the reputation that we have established, that I've established with you. And that's the reason why I'm eternally grateful to you and to the citizens of Bexar County, because they know who I am. They trust me, they know who I am, and I am a person who has dedicated his entire life to public service, to be a servant leader, to care for our community. And that's the reason why I've stepped up to be your next county judge. The late General Colin Powell, I believe, said it best. Leadership is about connecting people. And that's what I have been doing through my entire period. And I think I've made a very clear case tonight of why I am the best candidate for this job. We're now moving past Judge Nelson Wolff and the visionary leader he was, but I want to basically stick to back to basics, what I call BEAR, B-E-X-A-R, necessities, to focus in on what is most important to our community, what I consider the most important infrastructure, and that's the children and families of our community. I've been endorsed by Judge Nelson Wolff, County Commissioner Rebecca Clay Flores, Commissioner Justin Rodriguez, and Commissioner Tommy Calvert. So I look forward to working with the elected leadership along with all the other elected officials to deal with our complex problems, to come up with those solutions that I will promise to work on and to find the solutions that what we need to do to move forward. So with that, I wish you well. God bless y'all.
First of all, thank you all for being here. I mean, it's important that you engage in the process. It's important that you learn about who's running for office, because I think too many times we don't pay attention to those things. So anyway, thank you to NOWCAST and Charlotte Ann, and thank you to Elaine for the great job you've done as the moderator, and for all those that are online watching. Listen, we obviously, we are very different candidates. We have one who's been a career politician, and we have another who's created jobs for people as a small business owner, who I think is really about passion. There's nobody that's got a lot more passion than I do. Passion, energy, pragmatism, and vision. And so as a small business owner for 25 years, and also a single mother of two for the past 15 years, there is nobody who's more of a hardcore fiscal conservative and locking down the nuts and bolts associated with county government. In fact, I asked tough questions when I was a county commissioner. I said I wasn't afraid to appropriate money, whether it came to indigent care, whether it came to the managed assigned counsel system, whether it came to domestic violence. But what I did ask for you all who are taxpayers, what I asked for was a return on investment. I said, we're going to appropriate this money, but I want you to come back in 3 months, and I want you to show me how you're moving the needle. Because if we're not moving the needle in the areas that we need to, let's talk. Let's talk about how, or we pivot, or we adjust, or we modulate to make sure that we are not just representing the taxpayer, but also making a difference here, whether it's the domestic violence rate that we have here, which, by the way, is the highest in the state of Texas. And so we have more work to do there. And despite the fact that I appropriated $300 million on the court and led that effort, I wanted to do more, because there is more work to do. That is the kind of vision that I want to bring to this court. So it is about locking down the nuts and the bolts, but it is about having a vision. And sometimes, I'll tell you what, folks, vision and change scares people. But you bring people along with your vision. You talk to them. You inspire passion in them. You inspire leadership abilities in there. And when you do that, like I said, people open up their eyes and think, wow, I can make a difference here by thinking a little bit differently about things. So I'm going to close things by telling you that I am only the second woman who has run for this office in the 200-year history of Bexar County. And there will be other women that come after me, hopefully, to be able to do that. And as the mother of a 17-year-old daughter, I hope she runs for office one day too. Because we're natural multitaskers, we care about people, and you are not just, when I talk about, you are not the judge of the county. You were named that by Constitution only. You are the CEO of the county, managing a $2.8 billion budget. That means you are the chief executive officer. That means you are the Chief Economic Development Officer, but most importantly, as a native San Antonian, it also means you are the Chief Empathy Officer from here, looking for ways to make solutions for seniors so that they age gracefully in their homes and they have access to services, but also we think about big ideas to move this community forward. I'm Trish DeBerry. I am so happy and blessed to be with you tonight. Thank you for the opportunity in front of you.
Thank you to Palo Alto, thank you to AARP, thank you to NOWCAST San Antonio. I'm so honored to be here, and thank you to the two candidates. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Green.
Thank you.
You're gonna say-